Over the years, I have ridden 1,033 different roller coasters, 155 of which were made of wood. I have ridden wood coasters in 33 different US states and 11 different countries. This video will count down the top 25 wooden coasters I have ever ridden. If you missed spots 26 through 50, I have a separate video covering those rides. Remember, this list is my opinion, and everyone will rank rides differently. The things I prioritize most are airtime, pacing, and a great setting. Number 25, Renegade at Valleyfair. My second favorite GCI just barely cracked my top 25. Renegade has a strong layout. It's fast, well paced, and it does a few things differently than the other GCIs. Many will point to the unique S-bend first drop, but I was more impressed by the straight airtime hills that delivered uncharacteristic sustained floater airtime for a GCI. Plus, you have your usual twists, turns, and quick pops of airtime on the turnarounds. And unlike Gold Striker, this Cedar Fair GCI is still running rather smoothly. Number 24, Goliath at Six Flags Great America. The weakest RMC is still an action-packed ride. The ride has an epic first drop, a wonderful airtime hill, and 2 great inversions. But that's pretty much it. Thankfully, those 4 aforementioned elements are all incredible, and at least when I rode it in 2017, the ride was still extremely smooth. The ride is best summed up by the mantra, quality over quantity. Number 23, Heide's 360 at Mount Olympus. This gravity group coaster is an endurance test, in both a good way and a bad way. On the bright side, the ride has one of the most ambitious layouts of any wood coaster, with several giant drops, 2 underground pitch black tunnels with a chaotic series of twists, turns, and bunny hills, and you even have a corkscrew. Hence the name Heide's 360. On the downside, the coaster is extremely bumpy. The Timberliner trains do their best to absorb the shocks, but this coaster is extremely hard to marathon because of how much it beats you up. I do appreciate that relentless layout, despite the less than perfect track work though. Number 22, Rorosaurus at Storyland. It almost seems criminal to have a gravity group less than a third the size of Heide's 360 ahead of it, but Rorosaurus is just that good. It's an airtime machine that violently throws you out of your seat on every hill, and it gets wilder as the ride progresses. The finale is very reminiscent of those final bunny hills in Steel Vengeance. That's how wild this coaster gets. For those who have been on the other Gravity Group Junior Woodies, Rorosaurus has more power to it. I can't believe this ride exists in a children's park like Storyland, but the coaster leaves me breathless. Number 21, Tremors at Silverwood. Long one of my most coveted bucket list coasters, Tremors delivered. The ride did need a warm up to deliver the rides I expected, but Tremors started flying by the mid-afternoon. This layout is incredibly diverse, offering several strong drops, particularly the first drop and drops off the turnaround, several good bunny hills, particularly the ones that dive in and out of the underground tunnels, giving sustained floater airtime, and you also have some great laterals, most notably the sustained Legend-esque helix on the first turnaround. The coaster tracked quite well and it felt out of control, outside of a lull towards the middle of the ride that knocked it down a few spots in my ranking. Number 20, Rampage at Alabama Splash Adventure. I only got 2 rides on Rampage, but upon thinking about those rides more, I realized just how great of a coaster this is. Like Tremors, this GCI blends airtime and laterals, but I think Rampage did it better. If you ride in the back, there are 4 drops that deliver some of the strongest airtime of any traditional wood coaster in the first drop, the second drop, and the final 2 drops. Plus you have pops of airtime on the camelbacks and turnarounds. And then anytime you change direction, the track is likely unbanked, so you're going to get some laterals too. The ride is wild. Number 19, Mindblower at Fun Spot Kissimmee. This ride is aggressive. The coaster is an intense start with an ejector airtime filled drop and hang time filled barrel roll, but it just keeps going from there. Mindblower is a frenetic frenzy of hills, each aggressively popping you out of your seat. The ride is definitely shaky, especially considering how new it is, but thankfully, the Timberliners are well cushioned so the coaster doesn't become painful for me at least. Number 18, Rutschebanen at Tivoli Gardens. You may be surprised to see a 107-year-old wooden coaster with a brakeman or brakewoman on this list, but don't be fooled, this coaster has some crazy airtime. This coaster has no seatbelts and just a very loose lap bar, so you come flying out of your seat on those drops. There is some variation between who is controlling the train, but at its best, this coaster will have you levitating in midair for a few seconds, or abruptly popping out of your seat. Number 17, Cyclone at Luna Park. This is another old classic, but it still delivers an intense ride. You have no seatbelts and just a single position lap bar, so you are thrown all about. And since the trains are extremely well padded, they feel like couches. That doesn't bother me one bit. This coaster sort of crawls over the tops of a lot of hills, sort of like a B&M Hyper. But almost every hill delivers some powerful airtime, even more so if you're in the back. The first drop in particular stands out as one of my favorite moments in any coaster. And then mix in the extremely underbanked turns, and you'll be sliding side to side on any direction change. Sure, the coaster's bumpy, but again, those trains absorb the shocks very well. Number 16, Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. The best GCI is unbelievably well paced. The coaster charges through the woods, never slowing down once. The ride flies over a series of smaller hills, each either giving sustained floater airtime or an abrupt pop of airtime. And despite essentially being an out and back layout, GCI designed this coaster masterfully in such a way that it twists side to side on both the outward and return leg to hide the next hill. And this may be an unpopular statement, but this is the best night ride at Kings Island, as Mystic Timbers feels completely out of control once the sun sets. And then you have the shed, which always brings a smile to my face. Number 15, Ravine Flyer II at Waldameer. This Gravity Group wooden coaster has a unique setting on a ravine and over a highway. The first half is among the best first halves of any coaster. You have an amazing first drop with some good ejector airtime in the back, and then the bunny hills early in the ride offer some of the best sustained floater airtime you'll find anywhere. The second half does feel a bit slow when you climb back up the ravine, but you still get a few pops of airtime if you're in the front or back car. Number 14, Boardwalk Bullet at Kemah Boardwalk. Gravity Group is very familiar with compact wood coasters, but this one is particularly impressive since it's a full-size coaster with over 3,230 feet or 985 meters of track that fits on a 1-acre plot of land. It's even more remarkable when you realize this coaster uses the old PTCs that have a larger turning radius. And because of this, the coaster twists and turns about itself, and it's an unpredictable joyride with some powerful airtime in the large drops, and then the several smaller hills offer varying degrees of airtime, from ejector pops to sustained floater airtime to weaker floater pops. It took me about 10 or 15 rides to finally memorize this layout. And thanks to the retracking, Boardwalk Bullet was running like a dream with no hint of roughness in 2020. Number 13, Colossos at Heide Park. The original Intamin prefab wooden coaster was completely retracked for the 2019 season, which caused it to run as smooth as a brand new steel coaster. And this coaster shares a lot of similarities to El Toro. The first drop isn't as good as El Toro's, but it still offers some great ejector airtime. And then the next two camelbacks are almost as good as El Toro's with powerful sustained ejector airtime. Colossus also shares some of the next few elements with El Toro, which consists of a turnaround and a speed hill that are just okay. But while El Toro proceeds to charge through the rest of its layout, Colossus meanders through this dreadfully slow and boring helix that kills the ride's pacing. That does lead into a solid finale of bunny hills that gives some good floater airtime, and you also have that flaming monster that's a spectacle. Colossus is a bit unevenly paced, but it's extremely re-rideable, and those first three elements kept bringing me back. Number 12, Shivering Timbers at Michigan's Adventure. With a layout more reminiscent of a steel hypercoaster than a wood coaster, Shivering Timbers is a fantastic ride. It has a bit of a shimmy to it, but the coaster hauls start to finish, offering airtime on every hill. The ride doesn't have many ejector pops though, but the sheer amount of airtime hills, particularly the ones that offer sustained floater airtime, made this coaster stand out to me. Oh, and that final helix? Yeah, it offered some crazy laterals as well, and a similar finale to Wild One at Six Flags America. Number 11, Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm. I never rode the original Ghost Rider, but the renovated one is fantastic. This coaster is very well paced, especially in the second half when you're plowing through the ride's dense structure. Ghost Rider flawlessly offers a mix of airtime and laterals, sometimes offering them together. But the highlights, without a doubt, are the drop into the second half that delivers some of the best ejector airtime of any traditional wood coaster in the back, and that final helix has insane laterals. It feels like you're going to roll over the side of the car. Number 10. El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure. I know I'll get a lot of flack for placing El Toro this low, but let me explain. While I love El Toro's drop, 2 camelbacks, and rolling Thunderhill, those 4 elements are among the best moments of any coaster with the powerful and sustained ejector airtime. I do find the rest of the ride's hills and Twister finale decent at best. This causes El Toro to feel uneven to me, while the coasters ahead of it are more satisfying start to finish. Again, I do really like El Toro, but there are just coasters I prefer more. If you maximize quality over quantity, El Toro definitely deserves to be higher on your personal list. Number 9. Swamp Fox at Family Kingdom. You may be surprised to see this one this high, but Swamp Fox is worthy. Operating with buzz bars, you have a ton of room to experience the airtime this coaster offers, and it offers a lot of it. The larger hills deliver shockingly strong ejector airtime, while the smaller bunny hills offer diagonal airtime. You know those speed hills and RMCs that abruptly toss you forwards? Swamp Fox has a few of those, and because you have just a buzz bar that isn't tight against you, you are wildly thrown horizontally while also getting airtime. And if that's not enough, you also have some wild laterals on that final turn. Every element on this coaster is forceful in some way, which is why I love it so much. The ride is bumpy on wheel seats, but it was quite smooth on non-wheel seats. Number 8. Boulder at Liseberg. This is the definition of an ejector airtime machine. Boulder is one hill after another, offering sustained ejector airtime. The turns in between those hills are admittedly dull, but I was always focusing on the next airtime hill because there's about a dozen of them. It's exceedingly rare to get this amount of ejector airtime like this in that quantity. Boulder is also perfectly smooth, and it hasn't developed the bumps you feel in a few spots in El Toro. And speaking of that, El Toro's best moments are definitely better than any single moment on Boulder, but Boulder beats it with the sheer amount of airtime hills it offers. Number 7. Boulder Dash at Lake Compounce. I'm ranking this off my favorite seat, the front row. In any other row, this coaster probably wouldn't make my top 25 with how it's currently running. Boulder Dash is very bumpy as you move further back in the train, and the airtime also weakens. But in the front row, Boulder Dash is one of the best experiences in any coaster. It's still fairly smooth up there, and you get to appreciate the coaster's beautiful setting on the wooded mountainside, and you have the rush of wind against your face as you feel the coaster's ridiculous sense of speed. The coaster starts with some powerful laterals, but quickly transitions into an endless series of airtime hills. The airtime is mostly the floater variety, but the hills towards the end of the outward leg give aggressive pops of ejector airtime. Again, you need to be up front to get the best airtime on this ride. And also, this is one of the best night rides in the world. There is no light on that mountain. Number 6. Wildfire Kolmarden. Wildfire is one of the strongest starts of any RMC, or any coaster for that matter. The first drop had serious ejector airtime, the stall had some of the best sustained hang time of any coaster, and the outer bank top hat felt downright wild with the sustained sideways ejector airtime and rapid directional changes. The rest of the ride is spent climbing up and down a gorgeous hillside. While a beautiful visual, it does cause the ride to slow down at points. However, the airtime on the bunny hills and hang time on the 0G rolls never really went away. And I do have to note, I was often the only person on the train the day I visited, so it's very likely Wildfire wasn't running to its fullest potential, but I still loved the coaster and it almost made my top 5. Number 5. Phoenix at Canobie. If you haven't been able to tell, I love minimalistic restraints, which is why Phoenix and its buzz bars make the top 5. This coaster is just pure fun. The ride gets progressively wilder as it goes. You start with some sustained floater airtime, but the airtime becomes stronger with each hill, and Phoenix ultimately caps it off with one of the best finales of any coaster. From the double down onward, you are launched skywards into the buzz bar, getting some shocking ejector airtime. Those final bunny hills in particular look cartoonish off-ride, and you see riders slamming their thighs into the lap bar, which is a good foot above their lap. And Knoebels takes perfect care of this coaster, as it has never felt even the slightest bit rough. Number 4. Coaster at PNE Playland. I have never felt closer to dying on a coaster than I did on Coaster. You have just a single position lap bar and no seatbelts. And I didn't dare let go of that lap bar once I learned firsthand what type of airtime and laterals this coaster offered. You will be sliding side to side across your seat and getting airtime so strong that I genuinely question how it's legal with these restraints. Coaster redefined what standing airtime is for me, because a majority of the hills will forcibly lift you a good foot out of your seat into the thin lap bar. This ride had a 90-minute unshaded queue the day I was there, but I kept getting back in line because of how good Coaster was. It felt like Phoenix on steroids. Number 3. Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City. Remember why I prioritize on a coaster, because Outlaw Run does all those things. It has an incredible setting on a wooded hillside. It hauls start to finish, never slowing down until a barrel roll finale, where it's actually advantageous to slow down to maximize hang time. And then the airtime is intense and powerful. The first drop is one of the best in the world with a sustained ejector airtime, and several of those bunny hills launch you out of your seat, sometimes while you're on your side no less. I know Outlaw Run is considered short by some, but I find the length satisfactory because there's no filler in the layout. It's just one amazing element after another. And I know some call the coaster rough, and sure it has some bumps, but it's still smoother than a majority of the coasters out there, and extremely re-rideable to me. And this is one of the best night rides in the world, which is one of the reasons I put it in the top 3. Number 2. Voyage at Holiday World. I almost put this coaster at number 1. It did give me pause. The main reason was because of this coaster's length. Voyage simply never ends, and it's always doing something over the entirety of its 6,442 feet or 1,963 meters of track. The ride starts like a hypercoaster with giant camelbacks and sustained floater airtime. Then it becomes a twister on the turnaround section with more aggressive pops of airtime mixed in. And then the return run is a crazy mix of laterals and all different types of airtime. This coaster delivers in all areas: ride sensations, pacing, and setting. And lastly, I want to specify I would rank Voyage in this spot, regardless if it's running trimmed or untrimmed. The only element I find noticeably better when the trims are off is the triple down, which you need to be in the back to fully experience, and I personally prefer Voyage up front. What I find most special about Hollywood Nights is the availability of night rides, because Voyage is one of the best night rides in the world. That is why I go to that event. And thanks to Holiday World's amazing maintenance staff, this coaster tracks really well and still manages to be re-rideable despite its aggressive layout. And coming in at number 1 is Lightning Rod at Dollywood. Admittedly, this may be the last year Lightning Rod finds itself on this list, since roughly 57% of its layout is being converted to steel iBox track. But outside of its much publicized reliability issues, this RMC is flawless. This coaster is everything I could want. It has an amazing setting on a wooded hillside, and that setting gets even better at night because it's pitch black on the other side of the hill. The pacing is perfect, there isn't an inch of wasted track, and the sense of speed is unbelievable. The ride starts with a deceptively powerful uphill launch, and there's one incredible airtime moment after another, each one getting better and better. The main drop is your typically great RMC drop. The wave turn and outside bank top hat have sustained sideways floater airtime, but every subsequent element delivers some of the most powerful ejector airtime on the planet. Most notably, the quad down, which I honestly consider the kint down because the speed hill after the quad down feels just as wild as the quad down. There's a reason that element may be the greatest on any coaster. I could just keep going on and on about Lightning Rod, but it does everything I could want in a coaster, and I could marathon it for hours without getting bored. In fact, I have. So those are the top 25 wooden coasters that I have ever ridden. What are your thoughts on any of the coasters in this list? Is there a coaster you're surprised that didn't make the list? Let me know down in the comments, and I'd be happy to let you know where it ranked, assuming I've ridden it. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate if you gave it a like, and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canobie Coaster. Thanks for watching.